Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4. And today we're going to be talking about tools for building momentum. But first, we just want to recap what we discussed in episode 3. And it was an exercise around values. And so let us just recap the questions that we asked for reflection. The first one was, we asked you to write down something you know you should be doing, but have been putting off. I hope you responded to that. We all are capable of doing this. We procrastinate. List the pain that you feel by not following through. List the pleasure that you feel by not following through. What will it cost you if you never follow through? And list all the rewards you will gain by taking immediate action. And so typically, as a refresher, if you, by example, wanted to complete a course or some sort of certificate, diploma, or a degree even, and you putting study time off, right, is to then sit back and ask yourself, what is the pain I feel by not studying? Is there any pain? And it's either a yes or no. If there is pain, it's like, well, I feel stress of not doing it. But when you put down what the pleasure is of not doing it, right, you could say, well, I'd rather be watching a movie, taking a walk. I'd rather be exercising. I'm more into that as opposed to that. So in the end, we know that the pleasure is more than the pain. That's why you're not doing it, of course, right? And but now you start thinking through. You got to ask yourself: is this still something that I want to complete? Is this still a goal that I want to achieve? And then you ask, what is the pleasure you feel by not following through? What will it cost you if you never follow through? Is there a real cost, whether it's a physical cost or an emotional cost? What is the cost that you will have if you never follow through? And then if you have agreed that this is still something you want to do, you list all the rewards you will gain by taking immediate action. And this is something which you just don't do superficially. You really dig and you say, well, I want to do it. So what are all the rewards? I remind myself when I was inspired to do so, you did have a thought. You did know what the purpose was for pursuing the goal. Anyway, that's a recap. Hopefully it reminds you of the exercise. And if you've forgotten how to do this, please go back to episode 3 and review. And but coming back to today's topic is an introduction of some of the mentoring tools around when you are stuck. You want to do something and you want to move it forward. So this now ties into that thing that you want to do and you're not getting there. So the first one we want to talk about is the AIM Smart Action Planning tool. This is when you are stuck and you need to make the progress towards the goal. And we're calling it building momentum. So the AIM Smart tool is an acronym that starts with AIM and SMART. And for some of you already know what SMART is, but in the AIM section is A is what is the acceptable minimum that you can do. I is what's the ideal. What is the maximum you can do? And M is the middle. What is in the middle? What is a realistic stretch? And I want to emphasize that this tool focuses on what it is you can do, not what you hope to do, what you wish to do, and what you should do. Is literally, practically, what it is you can do. What is in your power to carry out? Not doing something when you have the means to do it. So S in the SMART part is specific. What is the exact first step that you need to take. And this is quite key. Many times we know we want to achieve a goal. We know that we would like to do it, but when we think about it, it's so enormous, and then it actually, we are discouraged from even trying because the elephant is way too big to start. But to build momentum, you got to identify what is the exact first step, and you'll be amazed. Sometimes it's just doing the research. It's the exact first step. Sometimes it's just picking up the phone and calling somebody. Or sometimes it is a question of getting the number for the person you want to contact in order to move forward. And that could be your exact first step. Secondly, M is for measurable. What is the measurement of success? So if it is about obtaining the number, a success means I got the number. Is it achievable? For example, if we follow with the analogy, yes, I can find the number. It's either in the book, or I know somebody. It's either I know somebody who's got access to the person that I want to speak to. They can give me the number. It's literally, if you're an assistant or a secretary or a colleague walking up to them saying, can you please give me that number? As simple as that. So is that achievable? Is it achievable to speak to somebody to get the number? And then reasonability is R. And we say reasonable rather than realistic or resourced, as you have an expectation. It's certainly achievable, but is it reasonable if it was to speak to your secretary or to a colleague? If that colleague is indisposed, meaning they're on leave or something has happened to them and you can't speak to them in the next 2 weeks, then it's not reasonable in terms of the time frame you might set. For example, T, already given it away, is your time frame. So if T is set that you'd like to do this today, however, it's not reasonable because the person you want to speak to is not available for the next 2 weeks. So it's not reasonable. So you have to change your time frame. And it's an iterative thinking tool. So aim smart. What can I do? Number one, what is the acceptable minimum? And acceptable minimum is basically what can I achieve in the next 2 weeks? All right. What is it that I can achieve? Not what I can do. What can I achieve in the next 2 weeks? The ideal is, right, is if it's about exercising, is that I want to live a healthy lifestyle. That's the ideal, right? And breaking it down even further, but what can I do about living a healthy lifestyle in 3 months' time, if I give you a time frame? Okay, it could mean, well, in 3 months' time, as the ideal is that I have lost 3 kilograms. That is the ideal. Now you might say, well, 3 months, Jacques, a kilogram a month. Yes, it's what you can do, not what you can't do, what you hope to do. Kilogram, right? And what is the stretch target is normally, according to the time frame, it's 6 weeks, right? So it's 2 weeks, acceptable minimum standard. What you're hoping to achieve. And let me remind you is what you can achieve, right? Rather than hope. It's what you can achieve in 2 weeks. All right, so that's the Aim Smart action planning tool. The next tool we want to introduce is the force field exercise. It's broadly speaking is when literally you cannot really identify the resources in your hand. You don't really know what's causing your blockage. And the force field exercise does 2 things. It's called a force field because you have to identify positive forces that you can harness to get you to a goal. And you identify all the negative forces that opposes you to get to your goal. And those negative forces are barriers in your way. And the positive forces, you think about it as boosters that will help you get to your goal. And so we're just giving you a little taster of what the force field exercise is all about. But generally, identifying both physical barriers and internal barriers, the emotional kind, is important because your action plan that you need to take needs to address that. So what you want to do is minimize what's standing in your way or eliminate what's standing in your way by using the boosters, the things that you actually do have, right? So to understand this, if you want to bake a cake, right, literally you go into your cupboard and you say, what is it that I do have in terms of ingredients? I have these things. You even go as far as identifying things like I have a stove, I've got oil, and so forth, depending on what you use to bake a cake. Now, you look at what it takes for you to build a cake. And so what is it on that recipe list or a list of ingredients that you don't have? You identify those and you go and buy them, or you make a plan, right? Where you come up with alternatives. And that's what the force field exercise helps you to do. So number one, I'll take you briefly through the steps, is determine the goal or measurement of success for an action step, right? What is it that you want to achieve? And you'll find constantly in this strategic thinking program that it's always about what is it that you want to achieve, that stretch. Not what it is you want to do or need to do, is what is it that you want to achieve. Then you brainstorm the factors where you identify what are all the negative influences. Now, you've heard me say, right, negative forces or barriers. Those are the negative influences that you are anticipating or that you're already experiencing are preventing you from achieving your goals. And then you do the same where you have a column where you identify the positive influences or the positive forces or the boosters that you can harness to get you to your goal. And remember, when you consciously apply the boosters and eliminate the barriers, progress happens. You start shifting the momentum towards achieving your goal or your target, or in this case, of an action step that you've identified, right? Now, in this exercise, you rate the impact of the negative influences and you rate the impact of the positive influences. For example, if it's a 10, you know it's something really big, very important for you to spend your time and energy on to either harness it or eliminate it. Then it's then important that you put down all the factors, right, that you've identified and you've given them a rating. So this is basically saying you look at each one of these factors that you've done, is that you ask the next set of questions is, what is my willingness to take action? All right, out of 10. If it's not a 10, well, I tell you what, it's not going to be prioritized and you won't take action. Then what is my perception of the cost to implement? Now, if you can go back to how we started and we reviewed the values reflection exercise, right? Cost in this case, what's the pain of actually carrying out this step, or what's the sacrifice of carrying out this step? Whether it's external, it's budget, it's time, those kinds of things, which means in certain cases, depending on how you're orientated, you're going to spend less time with the family, and that's pain. But also budget, how much money you're going to be spending, right? But that's your perception of cost to implement. Then you think about what is the ease of implementation? How quickly can I do this, right? Even with the constraints, but if you can do this and you can see results soon enough, you score that same activity. Whether it's something that you're doing to eliminate a negative influence or to harness a positive influence, ease of implementation. So, for example, if you want to live a healthy lifestyle and you said as a positive influence is that you got a gym that's within a 5K radius of where you live, right? So, and your activity is, I want to go and join the gym. So ease of implementation is either online, that's the other thing, or physically drive to the place and walk in and say, well, I want to sign up. That kind of thing, right? It's a convenience question. And then you think about, if you carry out this activity, you go back to what it is you want to achieve and what is the impact on that goal or action step, right? So out of 10, is it 10? If you do this, it's going to absolutely get you to that goal. It sits actually on a critical path. If you do this, builds momentum, or not really. It's a nice to have. And so this helps you with the prioritization. So you add up all these scores and you get a number, and then you can start to rank them, right, in descending order. So you know that your priorities rise to the top, and suddenly more conscious of the things that you need to be doing. And like everything else, it's related to one another. As you start working on one thing, it starts impacting on other things. A virtuous cycle in some sort of case. Okay, so that is the force-filled exercise. Now, obviously, you need to take, you now know what your priorities are. Now you start implementing the next steps. So as per the AIM Smart action planning tool, we talked about identifying the exact first step. Now with any action planning, you start off with, so what is my exact first step? And then what is my exact next step? And what is my exact next step? And so on, and so on, and so on. For some of you who are familiar with project management, you'll say, but Jacques, that just sounds like a work breakdown study. I would say that's correct. But knowing about a work breakdown study and actually being able to come up with one is two different issues. So we want to simplify it, demystify it, and just talk and think about it in terms of, where do I want to start? And what's the next thing that I need to do? And as you itemize all of these things, I think the brilliance of all of that is, you write them all down, and you'll be amazed that as you put the steps down, you begin to execute those steps without even coming back to your action plan. And that is a promise. The last thing that we're going to be dealing with is when during the force-filled exercise, you've come up with the negative influences, the barriers that prevent you from achieving your goal. And sometimes you need to understand what lies at the root of these negative influences. And so there's a tool, we call it the 5 whys. And that literally just means, writing down the negative influence, which you've done during the exercise, the force-filled exercise. And you need to ask, why does this negative influence exist? Whether it's a physical one, external one, or whether it's an internal one, emotional one. And what you do is you brainstorm as many as possible. So the first question is, why does the problem exist? And then you brainstorm. Now, this is a very helpful exercise if you can have somebody to help you with the brainstorming. And brainstorming says, well, anything goes. Everything goes. You write them all down. You don't second guess it. You don't audit as you do so. So sometimes you end up with more than 10 answers to that first question. And the way to do it then is to say, look at your answers, up to 10, 15, doesn't matter how many. You ask the question, which of the list that has been generated answers that first question most accurately, right? So you select it, and then you ask the question, all right, this answer to this first question is, why does it exist? And you go through the same thing as brainstorm reasons, identifying the most accurate answer, and then you brainstorm why that exists, and you do this at least 5 times until you drill down to the absolute root. This is a wonderful exercise because you don't want to waste your time coming up with an action plan that only deals with the symptom. If you never deal with the root of a problem, that problem is going to recur over and over and over. And that's what leads to a sense of hopelessness, a sense of, doesn't matter what I do, I always have this barrier. I can never shift this barrier. Guess what? You're just dealing with the barrier from a symptomatic point of view, rather from a root cause point of view. And so once you've done all of these things and you come to your final answer, right? Then you use the Aim Smart tool again, right? You want to aim at something. What are you aiming at? Eliminating a barrier. And so if that barrier says, I have a fear of failure, for instance, and you ask yourself over 5 times why in the way I've described before, and eventually you say, I have a fear of failure, and the final answer is, because I do not want to disappoint society, parents, husband, wife, that kind of thing. And in their eyes, I'm going to be less than. Or the final answer is, I'm experiencing a sense of imposter syndrome. Then it is, you reframe that answer and you say, I want to deal with my imposter syndrome. Meaning, I'm faking it and I'm not making it, and somebody's going to discover pretty soon that I'm a fake. So I don't want to be a fake. I want to have confidence of being all that I am in my own skin. I'm aiming at this. So what is A? Acceptable minimum. I is the ideal. And in between is the stretch goal. And you literally break it down into 3 months. What can you do over 2 weeks as far as regaining your self-confidence is concerned? As far as how you see yourself in the eyes of others. And so on, and so on, and so on. I wish you all the best with this tool and build momentum towards goals. Remember, what is the pain or pleasure of procrastination? What are the rewards that you will gain by actually following through and achieve your goals? I want to encourage you, build momentum. Do not stop. The reward is just around the corner. Thank you very much, everyone. Until we chat again. Bye for now.